Well, hi, Albert. Thank you for participating in my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so my name is Albert. I am currently calling from Nigeria. I am a 29-year-old PhD candidate, but then I currently work around science, innovation, and tech, and I also work currently for the government in Kaduna, which is a state in Nigeria. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing, and I'll be doing that for the next 2 or 3 months before I move on to something else.
That's pretty neat. And I mean, what's what area do you study? You say you're a PhD
Okay,
candidate?
yes. So I am currently studying biochemistry. Yeah, so while growing up, I would always reply to what you wanted to be when you grew up to say I would want to be a nuclear physicist or an astronaut, right? So I ended up doing something completely off of physics. So it was biology and chemistry as a biochemist. So,
And what do you work with as a biochemist? Do you
so
work with like bacteria, or is it something else?
um, so I do more biotech innovation for the food and ag industry. So my company is currently working on a coating that preserves fresh food. And that's supposed to be like this beautiful revolutionary method because we are trying to leverage circularity in our model. So we use waste from shrimp or from the shrimp industry to extract things that we use to coat fresh food to preserve the food. So it's pretty exciting stuff. Anyway,
It is, yeah. Growing food is essential both for life here on Earth and to move life to other parts in the solar system.
yes, yes. And so I prefer working more towards the preservation of the food because, for example, aside from now being on Earth where we need to conserve what we waste and ensure that people who do not have access to food can actually utilize what is usually being wasted, um, life on Mars or on the moon or on any other planet would require some form of preservation, right? So it just seems like an exciting thing to venture into.
And I know you haven't given up the dream of becoming an astronaut. You mentioned that you participated in the Mars One project, and now you're participating in the Dear Moon project. Maybe you
Yes.
could talk a little bit about how you found out about those things and what excited you about them.
Okay, so I think I found about the Mars One project, I think way back in 2017 or 18. That was when the project was starting off. And there was this massive call for young people interested in going to Mars. And it was a one-way ticket. So you go to Mars and never come back. But I applied despite like a lot of resistance from people around me. I had friends who were like, "Are you crazy? Why would you want to go to Mars and never come back? Like, why leave the world? So fine, if you want to travel to space, just go to space and come back at least. Don't go die there, right? So, but it was exciting for me because it just was an opportunity to try out something that I ordinarily wouldn't have the opportunity to do. Like I said, the astronaut thing just went off course, and then so seeing that was just an opportunity to try out something I wouldn't have been able to do because now the call was for people from diverse industries. So we had people from the arts, people from social sciences, people from core sciences, people from really technical aspects of engineering and all of that. And it was supposed to be like a competition. And so we had this series of activities you would have to complete. You would have to create a profile. You would have to create videos. You would have to publicize the videos on social media, get a lot of following and engagement. And so it was just this very exciting time for me. But sadly, I think they ran out of funding and then the project kind of just died down over time. So after that, I got to hear about the Dear Moon project because I follow Elon Musk on social media. So I think I saw one of his posts about the call for the Dear Moon project where it was like, oh, they need 8 people to join the mission to the moon, right? And I was like, okay, here's another opportunity and here's another chance. Just go for it. And when I checked the requirements they were asking for, it wasn't really something exceptional. It was just they just needed people who would contribute something to such a trip, right? So you have something you're currently doing, you have a way to ensure that the trip and the experiences from that trip would go into feeding whatever you do when you return back to Earth. So it just seemed like an exciting thing to also get on. So I signed up for that. I'm still waiting on to hear back the feedback from my application and all of that.
Now, the Dear Moon project seems very promising because, there's a billionaire in Japan funding it.
Yeah.
We've had humans travel around the moon. SpaceX, which has had experience launching, I think, hundreds of spacecraft, and it's launched, what is it, about 10 people so far into space, and it seems very, very realistic, like it's going to happen. It feels like.
Yeah. So you can imagine from my perspective being part of a program that ran out of funding and then coming on to join a program that is run by a billionaire. So it just makes a lot of sense because I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't happen because so far everything seems like it's supposed to work out.
Yes, for sure, and it's a exciting type thing. And I know he wants to send 8 artists, somebody, and using art as a very broad term, everything from what people might think of as painters and sculptors to singers and movie writers and novelists and all these things. I applied also. I put down my interviewing as my art. I think this is so. I think that may be a stretch, but I'm kind of curious. Are you also do you do some type of artistic thing, or how did you what did you put down for that question?
Okay, so I am this person who has always been pulled in directions aside from sciences. So at heart, I'm a scientist, but I also have this like really weird aspect to me that is just inclined to the arts, right? So I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of poetry, I do a lot of human engagement. I love the whole concept of sociology and the fact that human interaction is just this complex state of being and constantly evolving space, right? So for me as a person, I translate my science to go beyond just science. So I don't believe science and tech should be done for just the fun of it. I believe science and tech translates into so much social good for human beings and for people. And so it's one thing to create science, another thing to communicate that science. It's something else to ensure that people you are communicating that science to also understand and appreciate that science you're creating. So I think I am more of a scientific artist, if I would say something like that, because it's all a journey and I don't see it as a beginning and an end. I just see it as a constantly continuous conversation.
That makes sense. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why did you think Mars One might have a chance at pulling off their goals? Because if you look at the people that actually work for Mars One, you had like the head of Mars One and a graphics designer, and that was pretty much it in terms of the business. And no humans had ever made it to Mars. And they're kind of the only uh, real work they had done seemed to have been just creating some graphics of what a Mars settlement would be like. And I was just wondering if maybe you could talk about kind of like how you felt about it and how you thought about it, and what made you think they might have a chance.
Okay, so the first thing that stood out was the fact that they were trying to create a community that would in turn drive the project. So people that were applying to join in on the project were people who were required to have some form of technical expertise that could contribute to the entire project. So you had people working in deep space technology, you had people working as astronauts, you had people working as engineers, so I don't think I focused so much more on the core team developing the idea as much as the community that backed that idea. So I think that was what kind of sold it for me, because I had interactions on the platforms with people from around the world who are doing so much amazing stuff. Someone doing research on black holes, someone doing research on like just really cutting edge science and tech that just made sense to say, okay, if all of these individual persons contribute science, contribute technology, contribute research to make this thing work. We had people working around food production. We had people I was working around food preservation. And so you just had so many aspects of it within a single community. So I think I wasn't so focused on the people behind it because, for example, the current Dear Moon project, they are billionaires, right? They really do not have, you wouldn't say they have like space tech experience or expertise, right? So at the point, I wasn't really sold with respect to the qualifications of the people that created the project, because I believe ideas are things that anybody can have, and what really just sets apart good ideas from really bad ones is the execution of those ideas, right? And so any person can have an idea, but then it takes someone really amazing to translate that idea into something that becomes a reality. So I had more faith in the people that were creating the community of the Mars One project, a lot more than in the persons that started up the project in the first place.
Well, that's interesting. So it seems like the real value and the possibility that it could actually turn into something came from that community that you're talking about. And so the fact that the Mars One company went bankrupt and is no longer a going enterprise, what happened to that community, and is it still together? Is there still, like, what happened to that?
So I wouldn't say they're still together, because I think I only just maybe keep in touch with like one or two people from that community, because I think there were like hundreds of us on that platform, and people talking about really exciting stuff they were doing in their laboratories and stuff they were doing in their home labs and all of that. So it just was so much happening. But I think that disappointment just kind of like crashed things for people, because it's like you come up with like this amazing thing you have planned, you are putting all of your efforts and your energies into it, and then it just goes dead, right? So I think a lot of people moved on, but moved on in the sense that probably just went on to nurse their plans and their interests in a different way, and found a different way to express that those drives and those interests in space travel and space technology and all of that. And so when Dear Moon happened, I can bet you that a few people who were interested in Mars One project would still be part of the Dear Moon applications and process. So
Well, that's I hope that's right. I hope they continued on with their efforts. So in addition to Dear Moon, which is planning to go around the moon in 2023, you also have NASA with their Artemis project, planning to send people around the moon in 2023 and also land on the moon in 2024. I was wondering if you had heard about this.
yeah, so I've read about it in passing, but not in as much detail. And so I was actually looking forward to the conversation, because I know you have like spoken to tons and tons of people over time. So I was like saying, oh, okay, fine, this is somebody I really would want to talk to, so I get to understand what his own perspective is as a person in the US right now, and then also as a person who has had a lot of conversations about that particular project. But I have read about it.
Okay, yeah, I'd be more than happy to share with you what I know. Did you have any specific questions or?
So I think basically on online, I could always find information around when the plans are supposed to take place and how they're supposed to happen and all of that. But I don't know, is there anything you would say is not available publicly that you know and can disclose or are allowed to disclose? Anyway, let's come from that perspective.
Well, I guess first of all, I'm just a regular citizen whose
Okay.
passion is space exploration, sort of like you.
Okay.
My
Okay.
job has nothing to do with space. I'm just a software engineer. And so I really don't know anything more than what's publicly told, and then plus my own opinions. But
Okay.
you know, the combination between those two, I think gives me a relatively um, a deeper level of understanding than maybe you know, just reading a few of the articles here and there.
Thank you for that. But anyway, I think you're kind of selling yourself short, because if you talk software development, there's just so much application that could go into space exploration, that go into the preparation before the takeoff and all of that. So you're really just selling yourself short anyway. So you shouldn't.
Oh yeah, I mean, we will definitely need lots of automation in order to make anything possible in space. I mean, like all the food production is going to have to require zero labor. It needs to be automated and needs to, uh, you know, kind of work. But you're true. You're right about that. Um, but yeah, so you know, the previous president, Donald Trump, his vice president, Mike Pence, had set the goal of landing the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2024, which was kind of an interesting year because that would have been the last year that they would have been in office if they had been reelected. And they really were focused on that goal. They pushed the Space Launch System, Orion. You know, they did the Human Landing System, and you know, they tried to increase the budget for NASA and lots of things like that. And then the current administration, when they were entering office, they were saying that 2024 date seems to be maybe unrealistic. And they're like, it's politically motivated, and we'll go when we're ready, and that type of thing. But they ended up appointing a NASA administrator who says he's going to try to keep the 2024 goal. So I'm really hopeful that by the time I finish doing these interviews, which is planned at the end of 2024, we will have people that have been to the moon and back.
Okay, okay. I think that's something exciting, because then it would be that you started off your journey when it was still a dream. You were on that journey while it happened, and then you still continued on that journey even after that. And I think it would make for an interesting documentary anyway.
I know, regardless of what happens, I plan to continue interviewing people all the way up to the end of 2024. But it's exciting to me to think that my story can still be simple. We plan to land people on the moon in 2024, and I want to find out what people think about it. Because the moment that date slips, then it becomes, well, we used to plan to put people on the moon in 2024, but now we plan to do this other thing, but I still want to talk to you and see what you think about it. So.
Yeah, so I understand how that would feel like, but what that would feel like anyway. But I think it's good that they are trying to be realistic, but at the same time still keep with the timing, because I believe most times with issues around timing of stuff as big as this, it's going to be around as much investments that are put in, as much of the human capital that is invested into that, as much of the finances. It could go beyond just the budget. It could be the management of the project entirely. So most times we find out that even expanding budgets on certain people and for certain things doesn't really create successes out of them, right? It depends on who actually runs the things and who is actually on the daily ensuring that these tasks are kept up to date, and all of the activities and the timelines that were set are being followed and being worked within. So I think it seems realistic when you put in the fact that just effort needs to be put in to meet that goal. If effort is not put in, then it becomes unrealistic, because then you haven't put in the work to get a result, right? So, but I think it's a realistic result to push for, given the fact that the US is taking this as something that is worth their time. Like I remember reading about the race for space, right? So the space race, and then everybody trying to compete, every country trying to say, oh, I need to get people to this place before everybody else and all of that. So I know we've moved on from that kind of, but it still plays on even in the global community. Like there's still this value on being the first to do certain things. There's still this value placed on the soft power that comes from accessibility to things that others cannot get or others cannot have. So I think it's something interesting now, but I don't know whether you're aware of any other countries currently working on their own moon landing projects or space exploration projects, and how you would measure that against the US's approach to that, and even the timeline for 2024.
Yeah, it's really interesting because China has talked about landing people on the moon in the 2030s and building a base in the south part of the moon, maybe with international partners like with Russia and other countries that would be interested in doing that. And the thing about China is their system of government may have may in some ways be unresponsive to their people, but on the other hand allows for them to kind of have longer range plans that they're able to continuously march towards. So
yeah, so I did a country analysis on China, and it was just amazing for the fact that they have built such an efficient system, and then this system is so efficient, it's not dependent on any single individual, right? So it's like a collective goal is born, a collective approach and strategy is taken, and then there's a collective decision to move towards that goal. So there's usually lower chances of failure, there's usually lower chances of the risk of it not happening. And so if they say 2030, trust me, they will do 2030. And I really have no doubt about that. So.
Yeah, I think the real challenge is going to be how to innovate, because oftentimes the big innovations require somebody to say something completely unbelievable and to pursue that. Like something truly revolutionary is kind of rejected by the current people. And I think one thing that's been kind of good in Europe and in America has been you don't have to convince a central power or everybody that your idea is right. You just have to convince enough people or resources to let you try it out. And then once you've tried it out and proved it, then you can convince them. So it'd be really interesting to see how China can allow for innovation, because oftentimes um, it's very difficult to come up with new
Yeah.
ideas.
I'm this person that I just have this belief that most times I think people should stick with what works for them. So I would say that for example, Europe and the Americas and all of that, the liberty that exists in certain intellectual spaces that allows you to think outside the box, right? It works for people in Europe and in America. But then if someone or people in China try to adopt that right now, it necessarily would not work because they already have a system, they already have a method that works for them. Just the same way, if people in Europe adopt the methodologies being used by China, it really would not bring forth results. So I think more than just the space to innovate, I think it depends on how that space is permitted. So places like China, for example, may have a little more tighter control, but despite that, they're still doing some really pretty amazing stuff in science and tech innovation and all of that. I know they have like a lot of that happening, but then we from outside may not see it as that because we do not understand what has created such spaces for them and how they are even able to manage innovation despite what we think are spaces that may not be creative or allow for individuality or expression, or but then they're somehow making it work. So I think we just all need to just stick with what works for us and put in as much effort to expand on that. So do not try to become what you're not, but then at the same time, just play to your strengths and allow everything sort itself out in time. So I usually just have that perspective.
Yeah, no, there's definitely that, and you know, kind of like the system we have in the U.S. Seems chaotic at times and unproductive for sure. But I guess what I mean is any type of like large organization, even like U.S. companies, oftentimes it's hard to be innovative inside of these large companies because you have to convince the management to try out something that's unproven,
Yeah.
that might threaten their current lines of business. And you know, kind of the dynamism that you've seen here has often been people who believe in an idea getting together, making it happen, and then they usually replace the bigger players.
Yeah. Or you get so fed up you have to leave. So
Yeah, yeah. But the question is, can you leave? Can you get together with a group of people and put together that idea? Can you make that happen? You know, that's the big question. How do you allow for that?
but yeah, but let me draw back to the failed Mars One project and say that most times when you are able to find and create a community of people that have or share a common perspective to things. So it may not be about, oh, we have to get to the moon by 2030. That may not be the goal. The goal may just be, I love space travel. I enjoy reading about it. I enjoy learning about it. I enjoy explaining to people about it. I enjoy talking to. I've had people who call me crazy and are like, "Why do you want to go to the moon?" Like it's not something. It's something very typical here in Nigeria to aspire to, because it's stuff that we are very practical people. So it's like it's always about practicality. How does this translate into a realistic thing for your life? And it's like, how does going to the moon affect your life? Like, so people would always want to see like physical practical results of certain things, but then fail to understand that there's this unspoken intangible benefits that you can aspire from certain communities that cannot be physically accessed. Virtual communities and spaces exist and all of that. So I think a lot can be done when you are able to gather. And then the world now, especially with the pandemic, has taught us to expand community beyond the physical, right? So for example, if you are in a company trying to float an idea, you are confined by the physical space that company provides. So it's like, oh, I am in this company, I can't create this thing, I can't push this thing because people there are not allowing me to. But with the COVID pandemic and how we've been expanded, and the definition of community has just been blown up completely to bits. It now allows you just focus on the non-geographical community you can create, right? So you have an idea in a company in the US, probably nobody believes it. In the US as a country, probably nobody does. But then you step outside of the US and you will definitely find people who would buy into that idea, people who would gather and rally around that idea and form a community for that idea. And so I think it also goes a long way to allow us think outside of physical spaces and the confines that we find ourselves in. So we just have to be creative, right?
We definitely have to be creative. We have to be tenacious, and we have to network and make it happen. But what do you think about the plans of putting people on the moon in 2024? Is that something that excites you, or what do you think about it?
Okay, so it excites me actually because it's stuff that, okay, fine, yes, people have been on the moon before, I get that, but then nobody has been on the moon physically in the 2000s. So it's something that is like a millennium kind of thing, right? It's a millennium-sized leap. It's something that hasn't been done in this new millennium. So I think, aside just the fact that, oh, space travel excites me as a person, I always believe in breaking new grounds. I always believe in trying to push the envelope. And space travel and landing people on the moon by 2024 is just one of those envelopes that the US is trying to push. So I am so all for it. I am excited about it. And I will follow the story when it's structured into a more like feasible and physical representation. So when I can see the people, when I can see the shuttle that's taking them to the moon, when I can know what is happening, how many hours it's going to take them based on the shuttle that's been designed and all that. So when I can get all of those tangible facts, then it even becomes all the more exciting because now it's closer to a reality than I would have assumed sitting here in this year. So it's definitely exciting.
Now, not everybody thinks it's exciting or worthwhile. There's a lot of people that look at like the pandemic or look at poverty or social justice or, violence around the world and global climate change and all these other issues. And they're like, why are we spending so much money to send a few astronauts to the surface of the moon when we have all these other challenges? Why aren't we using those resources to address these other challenges? And I was just wondering how you think about that.
Okay, so I would think of it from two perspectives, right? So I told you I innovate biotech solutions for the food and agriculture industry, right? And this is a sector that is highly impacted by climate change and all of the desertification and all of the other implications that come with climate change, right? And in fact, climate change as a topic is something that you would still find people today who would tell you there are more important things. So I think the issue of importance depends on who you're talking to. It depends on who that person is within themselves and then what they have time for. So I don't believe we all can solve the same problem. I believe more in divide and conquer, because if I feel passionate enough about climate change and I'm solving climate change, and you feel so passionate about child and maternal health, and they are solving issues around that. If somebody else is solving issues around food and hunger and poverty, we are all contributing to the development of the whole, right? So I don't think we should see it as competition. We should see it as just the actions in different methods or in different ways to get us to one goal. So the goal is to ensure we survive. The goal is to ensure we thrive. The goal is to ensure as human beings on Earth, we outlive what we assume would be the end based on what the climate experts are telling us, right? So if, for example, that's one aspect of it anyway, that we all can't be focused on the same thing. So if someone is focused about space travel, please allow them to be focused on space travel. They cannot force themselves to be focused on something they are not really interested in or passionate about, and that is all right by it. So that's number one. The second part is the fact that why are people not considering the fact that we could actually find the cure to the pandemic in Mars or on the moon, right? So it's such it's an area that has not been explored, and there's so many potentials and possibilities. So it's so vast that we cannot adequately comprehend it now. So we are saying, why are we investing money in this? But then why not? That's the question I would ask. Why not? Because you could very well go there and then find something that cures HIV and AIDS. And this is something we've been grappling for decades and decades, and people have been dying from. You could go to the moon and find an organism that helps. So there's just so much that could happen, that if you focus on why you shouldn't do certain things, then you rob yourself of the benefits that could be realized if you had just done it in the first place. So I would come from it from those two perspectives. Number one, we all can't be passionate about the same thing. We all can't find the same thing to be the urgent need. My definition of an urgent need may be getting food on the table, enough for me to eat and stay healthy. Somebody else's definition of urgency may be finding where to sleep. And I may be a person who do not sleep. I probably don't enjoy sleeping. I'm like, oh, give me a floor. I can sleep on the floor without a mattress and without a bed, right? So it's peculiarities with individuals. So allow these individuals form communities, allow these individuals explore the options in their own safe spaces, and you focus on what you can explore and solve. And then on the second hand, there's just so much that could come from exploring space. There's so much that could be discovered. There's so much that could be created. There's so much that could be learned. There's so much that could be beneficial to us on Earth. So why rob ourselves of the possibilities simply because we are looking at probably the budget of it, or the fact that, oh, we feel something else is more important? It's possible that what you're thinking is more important would probably be solved if somebody had just gone to live on the moon.
Well, that's definitely a good perspective, that through discovery and exploration, we push ourselves to discover things we didn't even know we didn't know. So whenever you look at humanity 500 years from now, do you see humanity still mainly on Earth, making these little side trips to the moon and maybe to Mars? Or do you really see humanity growing beyond the Earth, and actually humanity spreading across the system, maybe even figuring out some way to make it to other star systems? How far do you think we can get in 500 years?
Okay, so I believe in human inquisitive, human curiosity, let me say. I know that as human beings, we are very inquisitive by nature, right? So we like to know, we like to learn, more so those of us in sciences or technology, and then people just wake up to keep asking these questions, right? And if I would give us 500 years, I would say we would have definitely evolved beyond where we are now. I cannot categorically say what we would be doing, because I really just can't say. I love the surprise of discovery, right? The surprise you get from actually waiting for things to unfold. But I see us in a time where it's common to, and it's more in fact, it's not even probably socially acceptable. It's just the norm. It's just, so it takes time for things to catch on, but really cool stuff catches on really fast. Like really fast. Okay, so I think once it happens the first time, and then people begin to commonize it, and people begin to make it normal, then we would see it improve and develop in even bigger bounds and leaps. So yes, I do see us exploring beyond our galaxy. I do see us moving beyond the Milky Way. I do see us trying to find out what is out there. I know as some people would come from religious perspectives and come from different angles of it and say, oh, you shouldn't explore beyond this, God and that. But I believe you just have to work with what works for you, right? Your convictions, your curiosities, your drive, your passion. Just go with that, because I believe those exist for a reason, right? They're not just there for fancy or for show. They're there for a reason. And so when you get curious about something, go find out. When you get excited about something, press on with that excitement and find out where that excitement ends, or where it changes and evolves into something even bigger. So I see us doing a lot actually in 500 years. I just pray and hope that we would still have Earth as a planet that is inhabitable and safe, because there's really a lot of cause for concern, to be honest. But then I see it as space travel can offer us alternatives and opportunities, right? Of how to be better, or how to have an alternative if we are not better. So for example, if we do cripple the planet to an extent where it becomes uninhabitable, right? Space exploration offers us an option. It offers us an alternative. But if we had not explored that option or that alternative, what would we end up doing? So I think it just it's something that was exciting to assume, but assumption can only go so far, because we really don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling to think about where we might be, and what the repercussions of that could be. I mean, can you imagine at some point, maybe the majority of humanity is moved off the Earth, and Earth is like this natural preserve with just animals and everything, without any cities and without any, it's just like a
Pollution.
big park. Yes.
Yeah, that would be exciting because I think we as human beings we are good at breaking things, right? We're good at breaking them for either the good reasons or breaking them for bad reasons. So, for example, a small child gets a toy and is like, "Oh, I want to know what is in that toy," and he breaks it. In his own mind, he probably has a good reason for that. He wants to find out what is in that toy, right? Somebody else may just break that toy because he just wants to break the toy. So, but at the end of the day, it doesn't stop the fact that the toy was broken in the first place, right? So whether the intention was good or whether the intention was bad, I think we as humans just break things. Like we try to create so much, we try to create some things too fast and we end up causing some harm. We do a lot of industrialization, we pollute the air, we pollute the water, we do a lot of these activities and all of that. So I think naturally over time, as a consequence, we would degrade the earth to a point where it may be inhabitable. And then having an option that allows us leave and allows the planet to heal becomes something that even is exciting to watch, because then it's watching what you broke get glued back together, right? It's watching it become something else, something better than what it was before, or better than what we had ever assumed it to be. So it's all just exciting stuff. It's all exciting.
Yeah, I wonder at what point we move all of our houses and cities underground and just leave the surface to, nature. And then we come up for, a stroll in the park, and, underneath the ground, we're, not affecting as much.
Yeah, but then if you would say we would all move under the ground, it now means you have to build like tons and tons of tunnels, right? So
Yes.
you just end up making the structure of the physical structure now of the earth as unstable as it can be, right? So there's just going to be so like I said, there's always negative aspects to what we assume may be good, right? So we probably would say, oh, let's burrow down into the earth, let's build these beautiful caves and structures inside the earth and all of that. But then we probably would affect the core of the earth. We probably affect the density of the earth. We probably would affect. So there's so many other things that could crop up. So I think, yes, we should explore, we should imagine, we should dream. But as soon as we are realizing that certain things may be worse off than what we had anticipated, it's perfectly okay to change direction. It's perfectly okay to explore options and alternatives rather than what we already had in mind. So there are some situations where people are just very dogmatic. So, oh, I want to do this and I have to do this. So, for example, we try the moon and then the moon doesn't really work out. Move on to Mars or move on to something else. Like, we should be open to that, the possibility of something not working, but then also plan ahead to know that if need be, we have contingencies available for something even bigger and probably better.
Now, I normally ask people if it was safe and affordable, would you go to space? But because of Mars One and Dear Moon, I think we already know the answer from you. So I would ask instead, for those people who would not travel to space, what would you do to convince them?
Okay, so the first thing is I really do not think I need to convince them. Like I said, I'm this very firm believer in following your passion and following where it leads and all of that. So I believe if something is contagious enough, you really do not even need to say the words, right? People would it's like, for example, you're in a group of people and then someone starts playing this really amazing music, right? And then a party just starts. It wasn't planned, it wasn't orchestrated, it wasn't organized, it was random, it was spontaneous, right? So I believe space travel can be spontaneous, it will be spontaneous, but only as soon as people understand, oh, it's not as risky as we think, it's not as expensive as we think. So those are the factors that probably would discourage people from doing that. And there's no way for you to actually just convince people about their safety, right? I couldn't come up and say, oh, get on the shuttle, it will not crash, because I really can't see. So I just believe, yeah, so I really can't see. So I find it not so good to try convincing people certain things, because then I even have this perspective where if something goes wrong, you're going to be the first person they complain to, and they are blaming everything on you, right? It's like, oh, I did this because Nathan said so. and that's it, right? But if it's a spontaneous thing, it's I bear the benefits, I also bear the risk, I also bear the disadvantages, but I am excited to do so because I caught on spontaneously for that. So I am not someone that would go so much into talking about people. So the same way I wouldn't convince people to not go to go to the moon is the same way I do not want people to tell me not to apply to go to the moon. So I've had people come up to me and tell me, oh, why are you doing this? You shouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. Think of your parents. You should be close by. Don't risk your life. And I'm like, it's my life. You called it my life, right? So in as much as I don't want people to tell me not to push myself to explore things I want to explore, I wouldn't push people to explore what they do not want to explore. I just believe space travel is exciting enough on its own over time to catch on, as long as people know that it is safe enough, it is affordable enough, and it's, in fact, it could become the next fad, right? It could become the next cool thing. So I think we should just allow for it to organically evolve and allow people to come in out of their own volition, because you really don't have this time, or rather the strength, to begin to convince people otherwise. Anyway, we're so busy enjoying the possibilities and options that could happen.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's a good point. But the number one reason that I remember people saying they don't want to go to space is claustrophobia. So it's not so much they're not willing to go to space. It's just they're not willing to go under the current conditions that you would have to go. Being
Okay,
so
so I would say, have you been talking to a lot more Americans? Because over here in Nigeria, Africa particularly, that's not something we really deal with as much, because it's like we really are not so how will I put it? You can hardly find people who would tell you they're genuinely claustrophobic, right? And probably even if they were, they wouldn't even talk about it, because there's just so much that goes into people perceiving weakness, and so much that goes into, so there's whole issues around this. So I'm saying that for me, on this part of the world, that may not be people's first reason. The first reason is, like I told you, they're very practical people. We're very practical people. We're very realistic people. So why would I get into a tin can and then die in it? That's the very first thing a Nigerian would tell you, or the very first thing somebody that is a typical African would tell you. It's not realistic. It's not. So rather than claustrophobia, I think people here would go first with safety. They would go next with affordability. They would go next with, is it necessary or is it just a luxury, right? So and those are some of the things I think people around here would probably grapple with. From those I've had conversations with, I think those are some of the issues around it. So, oh, I am excited about space travel, but it's so expensive, so why bother? Oh, I'm excited about safe travel and space travel, but then there's a possibility for the spaceship to go kaboom in the air, right? And where does that leave me? I just become a name or a number somewhere that just died on a trip to outer space. So I think people around here will have more concerns around safety, around affordability, around necessity. So for example, the Earth is going to explode, right? And you have no choice but to get on a spaceship. Trust me, people around here will jump on a spaceship, because it's like, it's a necessity now. It's a survival thing. It's compulsory, because without that, you really cannot survive here. So I think people here would have kind of like a different perspective to why they wouldn't want to sign up for a space trip.
that makes absolute sense. And there's a lot of people here that would share that exact same perspective too, about costing too much. Why would you get into a can and die and that type of thing?
Yeah.
Well, Albert, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
So let me see. So question, you do these conversations every day?
Yeah, every day. I try to do them in person. I started this project in December 2019. One reason is because I had been working from home for several years before that. Now it's kind of funny. I say I work from home, everybody else goes, me too, but back then that's not what was happening.
Yeah.
And I realized I was only seeing the people in my house, which now everybody's only seeing the people in their house, but that's a different story.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I created this project to get me out of the house, to talk to people in person.
And then now you're back, and then you're back.
Now I'm back in
now.
Yes. So the whole project kind of went sideways like that.
Yeah.
But
I think rather than sideways, it probably went better, because I don't know how far can you get with talking to people physically, over an extended period of time. So take, for example, 2019 to 2021, that's like 2 years. So how realistic would it have been to have physical conversations that probably would be documented or recorded, or you would schedule properly for a 2-year period, right? But then with everybody now back working online, or rather everybody working online like you used to, it just kind of makes things easier, and then it even just expands your options of guests. It expands. So for example, I'm in Nigeria, halfway across the world, and like we're talking about space travel and stuff. So I think it's don't see it as going sideways. Just see it as being expansive, a little bit more expansive and different. So yes, you had a different plan, but then it evolved into something else, and it's as exciting as it should be, because you would get even more diverse perspectives, and that just enriches the conversation for you. So now the next person you talk to, you have something coming from Nigeria, something coming from Africa, something, so you have a different perspective to it. So it just would make your project be much better, trust me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And also, you know, I've been able to plan conversations with people and kind of go deeper than maybe I would be able to going up to a coffee shop and asking somebody, you know, 3 or 4 minutes worth of questions, and
Yes.
you know them.
You probably wouldn't have your time.
Yeah, then their coffee's ready and they gotta go, you know. So yeah, you're right. It's definitely enriched the project from that standpoint. And I've talked to people, like you said, in Africa, in Asia, in South America, in Europe, and you know, all over, all over. So it's been very enriching from that standpoint for sure.
I'm glad for that, and I look forward to your documentary. I look forward to a series or something that would come off of this project anyway.
Yeah, I really haven't thought too much about that. Keeping up with the daily interview has honestly pushed me to my limits. So I think after I get done with the whole project, then you know, maybe take a break for a couple of years and come back and see about putting something together
What
with
to
it.
do?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, it does make sense. I can imagine just how exhausting it gets to have conversations and conversations. But I do look forward to it. I hope that we would still have a planet that is inhabitable by then. I hope that we would have gone to the moon by then, and would have so much more. So this project now serves as context for people about what was before that happened. So
Exactly. That's the way I see it. Like the true audience for this project hasn't even been born yet.
exactly, yeah, exactly.
So,
Definitely.
but yeah, it's gonna be great. Every morning I wake up and I think, oh my gosh, I've like on the days I have people interviewed, I mean scheduled, you know, no stress, right? I just show up at the time and they're there. But on the days I don't have people interview, it's like, oh, who am I going to interview today? It's today going to be the first day that I missed somebody, you know, because
Yeah,
I've been doing it every single day. I have
consistently, yeah.
a trend of over like 500 and some odd days at this point. So anyway.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that worry will just keep you on your toes, and just keep you a lot more, help you stay sharp. So you stay sharp, and you find people, you find people where you ordinarily wouldn't go to find people. So for example, I connected with you through, I think, a comment you made on my post or something like that. I think so it just gives you new ways to be innovative, and new ways to search for potential speaker guests, and just have these conversations that make a lot of sense anyway. So, but make a lot of sense to us, may not make a lot of sense to other people, but then who cares, right?
Maybe not a lot of sense to other people today, but then perfect sense to people 100 years from now.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Albert, I hope you have a good rest of your evening, and thank you again so much for talking to me.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for having me. Enjoy your day, and take care, and good luck on the project. Wishing you all of the best.
Thank you so much. Okay, talk to you later.
Bye. Yeah.